In this video, I'm practicing this blurry soft background using wet on wet watercolor techniques, and I'll be sharing with you what I did to achieve this. So in the event that you are looking for some tips or pointers, then you can listen to my voiceover. If not, go ahead and mute this audio and you can just visually follow along and practice with me. So really quickly before we get started, if you see me making hand gestures like I'm talking about something to the camera in this time lapse, it's because I am. This was recorded as a real-time lesson inside of my Paint With Me membership community, and what's showing here on YouTube is a time lapse and a little voiceover with a few tips and guidance about how I did this in a more general way. So if you want to find out more information about the community and how to learn with more real-time guidance, you can just click the link below the video in the description box. I'm also going to be leaving all of the colors and links to the supplies I used as well, so you can find all of those below the video too. All right, so what you saw me do at the beginning of this video is wet both sides of the paper. I call it soaking the paper because I really find for me that it works the best for these soft looks. Also, you can just tape down the borders of your paper and then wet one side. That works as well, but I really like how much water the paper can hold this way. It gives me more time. You can see that the paint moves more, or just kind of in a different way. I can't really describe it in words, but the paint definitely behaves differently. And I want to say that, the more I've painted over time, the more I've understood how my tools and supplies are working and then how to work with them. So this happens to be arches, and I've just really grown to love how the arches sheet in particular, behaves when I soak it with water, when I paint both sides with water with a brush, and then I get started with this wet on wet technique. So when you're painting this wet, timing is a really big factor. So when you're first starting, the paint is going to move a lot. So it spreads very drastically compared to when it's dry. And so you want to cover the most area at this beginning stage. And so you can see I make big strokes. I let the paint cover a lot of area. I'm also starting with the lightest colors. So it's almost like doing a base layer. So I'm looking at the overall photo. I'm looking at what areas are covered by the most colors and what are the light versions of those colors that I can put in. And then while it's wet, I will build the layers up. So when it's wet like this and you're adding colors and you're painting, what happens is they start to move and blend together quite effortlessly without streaks. It has a really soft look. And so to create this soft, blurry background, that's really the sweet spot that we want to work in. As time moves on, as the paper dries, then the paint is going to spread less and less. It kind of stays more contained, as you can see, as this video goes on, and it moves in a less drastic way, which means that then we have a little bit more control as time goes on. And so what I like to do is paint the biggest areas first, the biggest areas of color. So whether or not it's that dark color at the top, that turquoise area, and then the green area at the bottom. And then now you can see at this point what I'm doing is I'm coming back and I'm going to either darken colors and then define them a little bit more because the paint isn't spreading quite as much. So I'll layer, and I will also stay really aware of the fact that the paper is starting to dry, and the more strokes I make, the more possibility there is of overworking. Now, one thing that you do have to be aware of as you're painting and as the paint is drying, as the paper is drying, is that your water to paint ratio has to stay pretty consistent, in the sense that if you at this point introduced a very watery mix, so there's a lot of water and not a lot of paint, and you have a lot of water on your brush, and then you began dropping it in, it's possible that you're going to start creating those cauliflowers. Cauliflowers are like back runs, they create hard edges. A lot of times you don't want them. In this specific painting, it's something that I don't want because I want to create that or mimic from the photo that soft edge look. So I'm going to stay really aware of that water to paint ratio that's in my brush. So nothing too diluted, nothing too watery. You don't want to be dripping water onto your painting at this point because it will create unexpected runs. The other thing that you can do, and why I like this approach so much, is that when the paper is wet like this, like the entire thing is soaked and the paint has spread too far, you can actually lift really nicely. So you can see I'm using a clean brush, and because this painting or reference photo we're using has a white sky in the background, I didn't put any color there. And so what I can do is lift. And you saw I took that soft edge that sort of spread a little bit too far, and I actually cleaned it up. Cleaned it up with a damp, clean brush, and I just brushed it along the edge that I wanted to clean up. I lifted it away, and it still has that soft edge, but it's not as wild as it was before. So at this point, you're able to do a little bit of lifting, a little bit of adding color, but I've stopped pretty much at this point because I don't want to have it feel overworked. If you look at the green area, that dark green area, it looks really soft and smooth. And that's really the point at which I knew I needed to stop, because if I continue to place colors in there, you're running the risk of either adding cauliflowers or disturbing the smoothness of it. At least that's, in my experience, what I've felt so far. Now, I think if you are, an expert or you're a master at, working with watercolors, I'm sure you could work in there and still have it look beautiful. I personally don't feel confident enough to do that at this point in my own experience level. So I will just leave it. And it's safer for me to not touch it. And I think not touching it is also a learned behavior. I think that it's really easy for all of us, and especially me, to want to continue to work at something, to think, oh, it's not done yet, I still have to go touch it. But with this effect, I think it benefits more from leaving it at a certain point and stepping back than it is to fuss with it. So it's also a great practice just to try and step back a little bit more than maybe we naturally are used to doing. So at this point, you can see that I'm moving to the foreground. I'm going to do a little bit of lifting. There are a little bit of, kind of highlight spots in the grass that are easily lifted at this point because the paint is kind of dry. And then I can just dry it and I can move on. So I want to point out one thing here is you can see that there's definitely something unexpected happening around the edge of the painting too. So there's a lot of water kind of pooling around my painting, and it has seeped back in to the painting, and it has created a little cauliflower along the edge, which to me, I always share these things because I think I share them with my community, and I share them here because I think if I don't share them, everything always looks perfect. And a lot of times we paint, this includes myself, we paint and then these things happen, and because we've never seen them happen to somebody else, we wonder what we did wrong, if it has only happened to us. And I think that there's something important about showing it here and pointing it out as well. So I want to point that out to you, that doing this technique, this has happened to me quite a few times, not every time, but it does happen. You can see on this one, it happened on the left side, but not the right side. And to me, it indicates that I should keep track of how much water is on the edge of my panel, and I need to soak it up before it runs back into the painting, especially when I'm blow drying. And when I blow dry, it'll push water around. So just keep that in mind too. When you're blow drying, it pushes paint around. So you have to keep that in mind as well. The reason why I blow dried was because I can layer on top of the previous background. So what I did was I blow dried it, and then I re-wet the bottom part, and then I am now doing another layer on top of it, but it kind of looks like I did it all at once, right? Because it's still wet. And I think that's one of the things that I want to point out for you in case you don't know this. It took me so long to discover this, but you can paint a soft background in layers. I can paint that first soft background, I can dry it, and then I can wet over that first background and do another soft background on top of it. So I'm doing wet on wet, I'm painting soft again. They kind of look like they're together. They kind of look like I did it all at the same time. And that's something I didn't discover I could do until quite far along in my painting experience. So hopefully that helps you, and it might be something new that you learned today. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope that you found something useful in this, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.